So what's the solution then? I mean, very tough question, but like if the problem came out 3 years ago and, kind of maybe it started with interest rates and then, yeah, like you said, we have spec tax, vacancy tax, Airbnb legislation, anti-flipping, like just death by a thousand cuts. What do we do now? Like what's a lever that, either the government, not that we want them more intervention, but like from you seeing it as to support developers, like how do we get them back in the game?
Yeah, and I'll say this two ways. We knew the answer 4 years ago. I wrote about it in my column, but I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, that's the difference now, is I was making a lot of noise then, but based on what I just told you about how governments see the development community, they're not going to make these changes. So I'll tell you what I think they should be, even though I don't believe they're going to happen. So it's really simple. We have a cost problem. So let's look at where the costs come from. Well, we have two building codes in this country. You have a federal one and provincial ones. They got to go look at the codes. And if you look at all the fluff that's in there, we're trying to solve every problem under the sun with the building code, right? So, we've got these things that can have 100-year events and they'll be left standing. And, some of that's great. We need that for safety. Some of it's fluff. And that's how we went from I remember working at Polygon in the late 2000s, and we did a concrete tower. I think we built it for $150 a foot. That same thing today is $500 a foot. How does that happen? And it's all these extra costs. I mean, the funniest one, I think, is, you think of in BC, you have to have flushable toilets on a construction site now. Flushable toilets. Like, what's the cost of that?
Really? Oh, man.
Oh, there's ridiculous things that you add. And then, just go talk to a trade and ask them all these extra costs that they have that they never used to have. The WCB costs, like all the safety costs they have to do, like it's insane. So I would say we got to go and attack those and say, let's get rid of the fluff. And let's get rid of, it's not just the fluff within it, but it's all the regulation associated has to get paid for. So WCB is a great example. Like, how big is that organization? It has to pay its bills. How is it going to do it? It has to charge trades to do things, has to charge developers, and that's how that happens. So, go to the cost. There's a ton of costs that could be stripped out of there for one. Associated with costs, I don't have to say it, everybody knows, the development cost charges. Like, it's just insane what that costs. That's not changing because that's a structural change where how do municipalities make their money? Well, off housing. And they're going to do it from your property tax. So they don't have a lot of levers. And they kind of fell in love with the DCC because they were making so much money off of it, right? Like all of a sudden development's booming, their budgets are ballooning on the back of developers. So they can't actually get rid of it. And so they need the Fed to come in and replace that somehow or to create a new structure to be able to offset that money. I don't think visitor parking downtown is going to do it. So that's a big challenge. And I think why we've seen them, they just haven't touched it, right? They just can't do it. So that would be a huge one that would relieve some pressure. Rates for sure is going to help. Rates coming down is helping. We're seeing a little bit of help on that level. But again, it's 1,000 cuts. So they needed to do it all. And now that they haven't, these little gestures here and there just aren't enough. Like, we need to cut way more out of it. So how do we get there then is the question, if they're not willing to do any of those things. I think it's going to have something to do with the baby boomers. I think the baby boomers are a huge player in this movie. And I think they were a huge player in the pre-sale movie previously. We just didn't know it. And the government talks about the boogeyman investor, and they blamed what they called the foreigner and the speculator. And we had all these names for them, right? And then we shut them down, right? The reality is, I worked a lot of floors, as you guys have. And, the investor is Joey and Susie, who have, maybe a $3 million house that they've got a $500,000 mortgage on that they're levering the heck out of. They're giving their kids some money to get into their first home or to buy an investment. That was what pre-sale looked like. And there was a few people that were professionals that had a lot of homes. By and large, there was a lot of people that had one or two extras, and that was the game, right? But they were like regular citizens. The baby boomers stopped making sense when they took away all the avenues for them to get their money back or to minimize their risk. And so now that baby boomer is sitting on, call it $3 million in clear title real estate. They're just not doing anything with it, right? They're not levering it to help their kids. They're just sitting and waiting. But that baby boomer, the oldest baby boomer, is now reaching the age of death in Canada. And it sounds really morbid, but the reality is over the next 10 years, they're going to be an enormous part of our population that's going to pass on, and they're going to transfer that wealth. And they're also going to leave these homes. So the other thing that we have to watch is they didn't downsize. A very small number downsized. Most of them are still in that home. They've got 4 bedrooms that are empty, and they're still in that home sitting on all that equity. So once that starts to move, and they're just such a huge population, like, it's going to shift a lot. The other thing I talk about that is you think of their kids. So who are the 2 biggest populations? Well, baby boomers and then their kids, which is the millennials, right? So those millennials are all sitting in homes waiting for mom and dad's money or for mom and dad's home. So they're leaving that home stuck as well. Because if you're going to inherit like 10 grand, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change your life. But if you might inherit 100,000 or 300,000 or $1 million or whatever that number is coming out of that house, you're going to wait. And so you might be sitting in a home that you're waiting for that money before you go do something and act. So I don't think we know the impact of that whole scenario, that domino effect, when that goes. You're going to have mom and dad's house come free. You're going to have, baby boomer kids' house come free, or you're going to have a lot of movement. And so my belief is that's probably when we're going to see a big shift. We'll see.
Sorry, do you think it's going to shift one of 2 ways? Like, is it going to open up some real estate and release some of that pent up supply and demand because some of those houses are freeing up? Or is it going to fuel spending because now, those kids have an inheritance and now they can go out and buy their house? Like, what's it going to do to that supply and demand issue we're seeing?
It's quite a complex problem, so I haven't seen anything to know which way it's going to go. I think part of it might be like, is that money real? Like, let's say you have this huge flood of these huge homes come on. I mean, what's going to happen, right? Those things are worthless now. So is that money real? Is a real question we need to know. Is like, is there going to be anyone to buy it? A big part of that's going to be what happens with immigration. So we've decided right now that immigration's bad and we don't want it. But like, once this starts happening, if we had somebody to buy that home, i.e. think back, mainland Chinese, large number of South Asians that used to come in this country and buy these homes, if that's allowed, then now you have a buyer for these homes. So I think that still needs to be worked out and seen. But I think what is going to be true is either way, you're going to have an influx of capital. And, one of the big problems I shared earlier within our business is we have a capital problem. Like, we can't do new projects because there's no capital to fund it, and we don't have a mechanism. So I think we have to see how that plays out. The other thing we're seeing right now, which is interesting, I think it's going to be a same problem later, is I spoke earlier about the Toronto condo problem. And why that one's unique is really what it is you've got an enormous number of studios with no one to use them. Yeah. So, who used to use those things? Well, 2 people, students and people new to the country, because, as a condo is ready to go, they'd move into a tiny studio and then they'd figure themselves out. Oh, the other person, the third one would be like the downtown, straight out of university, doing the Bay Street shuffle. I'm going to go get my first studio. But that person's not working downtown, may not even have a job. So you've kind of cut off all of the people who would use that unit type. So now it's like, we have too many of these things. We have the wrong unit. Well, that could happen again. I think we have to see what gets freed up from these boomers and if there's a buyer for that thing, if anybody wants it. So there's a bunch of factors that have to play out. But either way, you're going to have like a whole bunch of people leave the market and leave behind a bunch of money. So that's going to do something.